Hi, I don't want to be tardy, so. All right. I'd like to start today's lecture out or introduction really, with just my personal, and hopefully you'll join me. Thank you to Dr. Kicklighter for all that he does here today. Certainly, he's a respected and well-loved, let's say, figure here at Ollie. So in that regard, make sure that when you fill out his course evaluation, you give a good grade. He's, again, trying to get tenure. So, all right, well, as always, please turn off your cell phones. Wisdom Wednesday will be right here tomorrow, 2:30 to 4. And it is with Linda Hemmings, will present Driving Safely. So that seems like that should be good. As I did mention, course evaluations are out on the desk if you want to do them by hand. You can, or you can go online and fill them out there as well. So please get that done. That is good till the 22nd of March. Now, something I want to talk about very seriously, as I have all you Ollie members here, is we are going to start a program with this spring semester, and what it's called is Complimentary Pass. And what Complimentary Pass is we're trying to obviously grow our membership. So if you have someone that you know that would be interested in becoming an Ollie member, but it's maybe not sure or possibly, what we're going to do, and it will be in the catalog that comes out, is we're going to put in a thing called Complimentary Pass. So if they have decided to use the complimentary pass, they can use that for up to 4 classes, but 2 sessions. So in other words, they could go to session 1 and 2 on the complimentary pass. And the way that works is they will need to call Shawnee over at the Sunny Slope, and Shawnee will then tell them if the class has availability. For example, a class like this has a significant amount of availability because there's 137 seats in here. Ursula's cooking class, not so much. So what they need to do is they need to make sure that they contact Shawnee, and Shawnee will let them know if there is availability for the class for them to come. So if you know somebody like that, that's great. And please, we're trying to, again, build our membership as part of the development committee. That's one of my goals. So help out Ollie and help grow our membership with the Complimentary Pass program. So thank you in that regard. Well, today's lecture is going to be on papal authority and popes. And, one of the popes I find most interesting is Boniface VIII. Now, if you think that there's nepotism in Washington, they got nothing on this guy. He made so many of his family members cardinals that he was running out of relatives, okay? He was a beloved figure, and how beloved was he? He was so beloved that Dante assigned him to the 8th circle of hell, and he wasn't even dead yet. So just to put that in perspective, there's only 9 circles of hell in the Divine Comedy, so the 8th was pretty darn rough. But I wanted to point out to all of you today that the 3rd circle of hell is reserved for those of you who fail to turn off your cell phones during class, so you've been warned. And now, for the last time this semester, it's my pleasure to introduce one hell of a historian, Dr. Joseph Kicklighter.
Amazing. Okay. Yes, we never know. Thank you, Frank. It's always a surprise at the end. And glad to have you on this final day. And I do want to announce, though, since that we are having evaluations, that you're getting a break, okay? Okay, so I just want that to be understood. I'm not taking any chances, in case there are going to be any kinds of raises or promotions, involved in this, because I have expenses. So Speaking of expenses, the popes had a lot of expenses. That's my segue, and I'm sticking to it. And that, of course, connects very well with the papal monarchy, because the idea of the papal monarchy is, to put it in an Orwellian context, all popes are equal, but some are more equal than others. And of course, we understand that of the so-called bishops, whatnot, he is, still is, Bishop of Rome. But as Pope, he had come to claim in the early centuries to be one of the top 5. And then gradually, since he was alone in the West, to begin to sort of branch away from the other 4, like Constantinople, and from the powers vested in him through St. Peter, claimed to be, to use the term that would become popular in this period, the Vicar of Christ, or even the Vicar of God. You know, why stop? The idea is, if those Greeks have anything to say, they better step down, because we are numero, and I am using the first person plural advisedly, we are number 1 and the others are kind of second. Silver as opposed to gold. The papal monarchy then will be the idea of that authority. And canon law backed up many of these assertions and claims. And they'd had plenty of time to do it. Apologize for that lack of space. The weapons were used frequently, and that would include excommunication, as we will see, individuals who fail to adhere to what the Pope said, they could be excommunicated, and interdicts could close down the churches in whole areas, which is amazing when you stop and think about that kind of power. I've often wondered about the element of enforcement, who was going around and making sure that that was done. But I've even seen a little bit later evidence of people being excommunicated because, for example, bishops fell behind in their financial payments. Popes had various kinds of taxes that they collected on bishops. And it's like, you know, you'd expect you get a little call and say, we haven't heard from you this month and we're looking forward to it. You know, you hear about that from folks who are one. And I'm sure they would say, like, you're going to hell. Yes, damn you. And you'd say, oh, that hurt. Well, yeah, and it'll hurt a lot worse if you don't get that money in. So, yeah, I mean, this kind of authority would be exercised over the clergy as well as laymen. And they would have their own law code, their own bureaucracy, and we all know bureaucrats are expensive. We all know that. All of us who have had jobs, we know about administrators. And they're expensive and they grow. And we in the South know about something called kudzu, and you all will learn about this. Kudzu, and they just grow. They reproduce each other, pods. They're more and more. And papal bureaucracy is the same way. There are multiple volumes of people who are called papal collectors. And that's all over Europe. There's a marvelous series, and we have them at Auburn, by W.E. Lunt. They are collections of papal tax collectors. I bet those are read a lot. But they are interesting and significant because they go into each collector. with meticulous records of each church and all of the collections to carry on God's work, or for the expenses of God's work, which is not necessarily the same. So you've got all of this clerical bureaucracy, you have canon law and papal courts, or I should just say church courts, which are the envy of all the rulers, because no secular ruler can pull this off yet. Those who try will use this as their basis for imitating. And this will include ambassadors, both resident or otherwise, like envoys who just come in and do something and then leave. You say, well, all of this then is a way that the popes are able to exercise their authority. And I remind those of you who remember your English history will remember the time of King John and all of his troubles. Yes, indeed, a sad, sad time. 1215, 1216, right around in there. The Pope's representatives stayed after Magna Carta to begin the process of looking after the government, because some will remember that John became a vassal for England. Do you remember that, some of you? And so then the papal representatives stayed there working with his son's John's son's representatives. You say, well, how did they have that authority? Well, I mean, he was now a vassal. So his son, little Henry, became a vassal. You say, golly, yeah. I mean, all of this was going on, and the authority of the king was, of course, diminished in a way by papal rights. So there'd be papal rights in England, there would be papal rights in Sicily, and it is absolutely amazing just when you stop to think how much they became embroiled in this grasping of authority. Now, of course, they never denied that lay rulers had power, but you were to understand that every lay ruler, like Gregory VII said, got their power from brute force, whereas the authority of churchmen comes from God. So they view it as the lesser authority and the higher authority. So you say, well, I want to have authority. Well, you can have it from me, okay? But you can't have it independently because you're merely a lay ruler. You say, oh, but that's the way it works. You say, well, what if I'm not Catholic? Well, that means that your authority is false anyway. So we had that taken care of. Get over yourself. So it's a very, very clear, in case you wondered, you know, that's those things that can keep you up at night thinking, well, how do we regard rulers who are Buddhists or Muslim? We don't, okay? Because this is the idea, though. Lay rulers are fine in their place. But you understand you're down there. You say, but I thought the emperor and the pope were together. That was last century. We've moved on. And now all lay rulers are inferior. They're into foot kissing. That is the pope. And that's the idea of the papal monarchy. And of course, this takes time, and it takes a lot of belief. It does not take, however, total unanimity. It just takes enough of the leadership to be able to carry off. And it, of course, will not last. The period with which we are concerned is just a century. And for the medievalists, that's like not a very long time, although I think it is a long time for many of us. But in terms of what happens in this long period we call the Middle Ages, we realize this papal monarchy has been talked about a lot, but only now it can be realized. It's because of him. Yes, wherever you come, if you ever go, run into a group of medievalists, you bring him up, and there will be a noticeable titillation in the group. Because they know whether they like him or hate him, nobody can be indifferent. You say, hate the Supreme Pontiff, Vicar of... Yes. He made his enemies. He was not one of those individuals, I just want everybody to love me. No, he understood. You got to crack those eggs to make an omelet. But he was willing to do it, believe you me. Remember Carcassonne and the Albigensian groups? There you go. I mean, if you talk about some of the deeds that are not very pleasant to us, we understand this man, who is rightly, I think, called the most powerful pope. Not the best pope, not the greatest, not the most pious pope, nothing like that. Because he wasn't, and he knew it. But he knew how to administrate. He knew how to utilize resources well. Oh, he loved Francis. St. Francis loved him to death. Just thought he was great. He couldn't be a Francis, but he was glad there was one. You know, it's that kind of thing. I can work with you. Like a producer, sort of like bring them all together. And he came to Rome, sort of like a tryout. And Francis really impressed Innocent. Some of you will remember that from the movie. I mean, it's like, it is amazing how he was, at age 37, able to step in and exercise this authority. He was a scholar of note in both theology and in canon law, which is amazing. And he had that special ability, which many would, he was a teenage cardinal. Yes, you say, wow, how do you get that? Well, I think they call it nepotism. His uncle was pope before him. You say, well, was this... So he wasn't a poor boy who rose up to become pope after he struggled and was born in a log cabin. No. None of that. Strictly blue blood with the education and background that would have been suitable. And you see his years, he must have just worn himself out during those years exercising papal authority, because he was still relatively young when he died. As I say, he was never... I mean, Gregory VII is a saint. There are various individuals who have been so designated by the Catholic Church, but this guy never even was a candidate. He never got nominated. I mean, yeah, you know, and you think, gosh, I bet the fan club would have been really hurt. No, not at all. Do you know I almost brought today, but I decided not to control myself, the Innocent Third action figure? Yes. I know I'm a little old for dolls, but I have the action figure. He moves his arms, sort of like, damn you, or that kind of thing, you know. And it's very beautiful. He has his tiara, and he'll go. And so we have a lot of fun together. But perhaps I shouldn't talk quite so much about my private life, just to note that we hang out and we think his ecclesiastical adventures, and during our playtime, that we can talk about what must have gone on in this very, very important reign. And as I say, he certainly had his share. I mean, he basically forgave and worked with those who were responsible for that dreadful Fourth Crusade, destroying Constantinople, that terrible business against the Albigensians, and it goes on and on. But in terms of being the powerful Pope, he knew how to put people down who got out in his way. And that included King John of England, lest we forget. Let's go back then to a situation that I hope you will remember. When we left this particular situation, it had to do, you'll recall, with the Hohenstaufens, the German emperors. And it so happened that the Emperor Barbarossa, Frederick Barbarossa, had died on the way to crusade, if you recall. If not, it's okay. We'll go over it. There'll be a special tutorial. Let's just remember that his son, Henry VI, became German ruler after him. And during that time, he did not live a long time. And as a result, his brother named Philip became ruler. That is Henry's brother Philip. They're both sons of Barbarossa. All of this is not important because, interestingly, even though you say, I know what you're thinking, Henry's second son was Frederick II. He's a little boy in Sicily. Remember that? Yeah, by his mother. You're going to get a family tree in just a minute. So that's exciting for you, I know. And you say, oh, once I get my limbs, I'm going to be okay. I'll be swinging merrily. But right now, I think it's interesting that Innocent III, without bothering with anybody, decides that I think these people from Swabia have had quite enough of being the rulers of the empire. So he shifted his attention to one Otto, half English. And Otto, who's probably pretty swarmy and probably said, you know, my Uncle John, King John of England, he was bad, but I love you very much. And so he said, you know what, I think I'm going to make you emperor. He said, really? Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's the truth. He became Emperor Otto the Fourth. You already know your first three Ottos. So this individual chose the title Otto the Fourth. And so now Innocent thinks he's got one. You know, one who will be obedient and do what he's told. He says, you know, you are my holy father, and I love you, and I want to be down. I want to be obedient. I love you, and I just love the Catholic Church and all of that. And you know what? I never want my troops to come near papal territories because I love you so much. And so you think, oh, but no one loves that kind of subservience. You're wrong. There are people who love subservience. Lick, lick, kiss, kiss. And I think Otto was pretty good with those cheeks. Okay? Very, very good. And so he and Innocent got along a while. However, things will change. While of Swabia, that is, again, Barbarossa's younger son, was not satisfactory to the Pope. I think it's not Philip of Swabia was not dynamic and very successful. Maybe that was the problem. But his little nephew was down there in Sicily, because some of you will remember your genealogical table, because it's probably popping right up now in living color. And you're thinking, oh, you mean this is the little son of Constance and Henry VI? Yes, you're going to get an A. You keep this up. This is clear then, it's half Sicilian, half German. And he will be Frederick II. He's brought up there in Sicily, but he's very German. Oh, he is, I mean, in terms of culture, however, he's very Sicilian. So definitely, he's a mixture. And if he hadn't become emperor, which he might not have, if Otto IV had behaved himself. But you see, Otto IV lied. I know. Mendacity at the highest levels. He did start moving German troops into papal lands, and that's a no-no. It might be worth a little excommunication. Yeah, no. And so, Emperor Otto finds himself ex-Emperor Otto. That's right. We can give and we can take away, loser. So Otto finds himself on the outs. And the Pope says, you know what, little Fred, that's Frederick II, down there in Sicily. And the Pope's going to say, you're a nice boy. You are. He said, well, thank you, sir. And I love you and I love Sicily. You said, can we really trust this young Hohenstaufen? Well, this is a big mistake he made. He did trust him. And he was young. I don't even know if he was a teenager yet. But he was a papal ward. You know, when I first heard that, I thought, well, maybe that means that somehow he lived in Rome and maybe he and the Pope hung out, you know, that kind of thing, bachelor father, that kind of thing. But it was not like that at all, I can assure you. It's merely a legal arrangement that when Frederick's parents died, they made the Pope his guardian. And so you say, well, that's nice. It's all about love and like, you know, oh, come on, give your Pope a big hug. No, no, no. We are talking legal rights. Very important. So, what happens, and of course you know that Frederick II's very interested in falconry. And this book, The Art of Hunting with Birds, was one of his, and this is the cover. Yeah, bestseller in its day. But he was very different. He's the one who allegedly had a harem and a menagerie and would talk to Jews and Muslims about their different beliefs. He patronized various kinds of experiments, like people would ask, say, have you ever seen a soul? He said, no, but I'd like to, so I'm going to do an experiment to see one. And I know, pretty fascinating. Go to a laboratory and see if they can do it. In his laboratory, oh, I know, that's the same look, that look. Because once you get these people and say, guess what? You're going to be part of a great scientific experiment. And so they go, wow. And so what? He puts them in a barrel and waits until they die to see if a soul comes out. Okay. So, moving on the limitations of science in the 13th century. Oh yeah, there are more, but that will do to show you that Frederick's interests were massive. But at the same time, Innocent III was Pope. So what he and Big Boss, Innocent Third, do is have an agreement. And the agreement, I know, pretty exciting, huh? There's your tree that you've longed for. We're going to get there. But he says to him basically this: at some point, you need to give up the German Empire or Sicily and give one to your son when you have one. And then you keep the other one for yourself. He said, oh, yes, sir. I love you. And that's Frederick when he's 12 or 13. And Innocent went with it. I mean, you know, we want to believe our teenagers, don't we? I mean, they seem so nice, and they could be so polite, and yet many of them are liars. So that was the case here. Now, here we have, I always love to point out, we don't realize it sometimes, the Normans are the ones who are ruling Sicily. You see up there, Count Roger, a Norman. I love that, William I the Bad. I'm not sure they called him that to his face, but anyway, you see his sister was Constance, and then she was married to Henry VI. And all the idea is that you know that those are the parents of Frederick II. I'm sorry to say, Frank, he's in hell right now, thanks to Dante, but... No, if he could, he would have, because he was a busy man. So here he is. You see him down there, 1197 to 1250. That won't be on the final, but it's just doing it to help you. And so the idea is that Sicily and southern Italy get completely tied up with Germany and creates just a whole confusion in medieval history. And because the Pope's lands were right in the middle, because he was Pope, and he thought everybody knew it and everybody would be respectful of those rights. Well, Otto did not do what he was supposed to, and he got in trouble. And now, well, Innocent died in 1216, so during his lifetime, during his pontificate, Frederick II was docile, well-behaved. He said, oh, gee, Uncle Innocent, I'm not, you know, I hadn't yet had my child, and we are really excited, though, and we'll let you know first thing we do so that I can sign those rights over. Mendacity. They lie to you. So, all of that, then, is to be understood that at the end of Innocent's reign, Sicily and southern Italy were to be separated from the rest of the lands. Because on paper, you go, what's not to love about being Frederick II? It's all mine, it's mine. And you say, yeah, I know, but I want that little bit of white land in the middle. Well, you know, sometimes you can't have it all. You got a lot, at least on paper. And now, a reality check. All of that, of course, is going to be imperial land. Frederick could care less about. I'm sure he liked the title. I mean, who wouldn't want to be called emperor, right? But he was nominal ruler. Those territories were more or less under their own dukes. And the idea of German unification, as we all know, is centuries away. So that is not going to be a factor. Strictly speaking, Frederick is emperor, but you're just being emperor doesn't give you power. And I don't know if he really cared, because he liked the weather in Sicily. So that's where he hung out, where his animals are, and his exotic interpretive dancers. What I know. Because the truth is he was right secular. Okay, yeah, he didn't spend a lot of time at Mass. Yeah. So, but it looks marvelously impressive. And look at northern Italy. You say, oh, Milan, I love Milan. Yeah, it's great. But again, the reality of the power there is very, very limited. Well, his reign will go on until the mid 13th century. But after Innocent III, the party's over. Because none of those popes later were going to say, oh gosh, you're little Freddie and you've grown up, you're as handsome as you were cute. You know, that kind of thing. I remember when you were just a tyke. You know, that's They are tired of his baloney. And they start throwing around the E word, excommunication. Yeah. And they think, you told us you were going to separate Sicily from the empire. You were mendacious. Yeah. And other hateful words. And you say, how could you do that? I don't know, but they were really having it out. And Innocent IV, my own personal favorites, he was a lawyer from Genoa, had great legal expertise and great authority. He got so bad in Rome, he had to leave Rome. He had to escape to what we would call southern France now, Lyon, to live there and basically try to conduct anti-Frederick activities. Now, you say, well, are they going to send him to hell? It's coming, yes. The Pope is going to say, you're beyond redemption. We just go on and send you, you know, sort of like double excommunication. Oh, a solemn high anathema. I love that. And they take the candle and it's in church and they blow it out. Yeah, and you are the candle. Yeah. Now it's an unlit candle. Loser. Yeah. Well, all of this will become when Frederick announces that he would like the church to be like it was in the days of Paul and Peter. Yeah. And you say, but what about our property and our nice things? Lose them. Rummage sale. You know, it's like give to the poor. I guess you won't be needing them anymore. So the idea of the return to the apostolic church was just a way of trying to get, I'm sure, those churchmen's goat, and they didn't respond well. So you have the emperor and the church leaders, I think you could say, seriously on the warpath with excommunications, interdicts, anathema, all the rest. And the irony is that Frederick went on a crusade during all of this. You say, huh? Why would he go on a crusade? One of the great questions, particularly because he shouldn't be on a crusade. When you're excommunicated, you don't get credit for going on crusades. I mean, it's nice and all, but you're excommunicated, damn you. So what good is it going to go? And here is the worst part. He got there. He got to Jerusalem. I guess he left his card. And he had a visit with the Sultan. Said, can we talk? He said, oh, sure. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about you. And, you know, they were hanging out and, you know, just two guys. And came to an agreement about Christian pilgrims visiting Jerusalem. This is the truth. And then we had a double excommunication. You don't make deals with the Sultan, damn you. And you say, oh, these words, they're hurtful words. Yeah, I think so. But they did not like each other. You say, could the Pope and the Emperor meet and hug? No. I think that's over. You're going to hell. And so it's really an amazing story. Particularly amazing to me is the story of Frederick on the crusade and hanging out with the Sultan. And that's the first, I think if we needed any other ideas that this is no St. Louis, this is no great believer, I think it's pretty clear that he'd rather just work together and say, hey, you want the pilgrims to come in Jerusalem? You got a problem with it? Nah, okay. Yeah, very, very bizarre. But by the end of the reign, some of you will already remember, unless you had to miss class, you know who you are, the Great Lateran Council of 1215, which determined the 7 sacraments, determined the nature of the priesthood. Oh, it laid down all the rules, and I pointed out, even the head of the Byzantine church got down before the Pope and swore obedience to him. See, that's the way we rule those Greeks, to learn who's in charge here. All of this, then, is to say that in 1216, when Innocent III died, it appears that the popes ruled the Catholic Church, possessed great authority, and all of the problems that will come up in the future are now not so evident. As far as the empire is concerned, that isn't going to end as long as there is an empire. How long is that? Napoleon Bonaparte. You know, Voltaire was the one who said, it's neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, and he was telling the truth. But all of this is to say that that situation goes on for centuries. And Innocent III, like all of these other characters, plays some role in it. The relationship then of Italy and Germany is quite significant and quite complicated by emperor and pope alike. As far as Sicily, some may have heard when I talked about when the Pope decided to take over Sicily, and he tried to get an English prince to rule it, and he tried to get a French prince to rule it, and then it became a subject of conflict and wars. Oh yeah, we don't need a World War II to make Sicily a prime place for conflict and war. It's been going on for centuries, simply because of Sicily's location. But in this case, because of papal interest in it and these Hohenstaufens in Sicily. I remember a friend of mine who's here today, she and I had dinner with an undergraduate, and she was going to marry a Sicilian, and she was one of our very best students. So I interviewed the young man to discover if he was worthy, and being a Sicilian architect, I assumed he had education. I said, okay, you apparently have a profession, but do you really know the role of the Hohenstaufens in the history of Sicily? And I was pleased with his explanation, so the marriage could proceed. But you know, you just never know that if Sicilians appreciate the Hohenstaufens the way that I think they should. So it's been a few centuries, so maybe if he had to review, I would have forgiven him. But those are very, very interesting issues to me, how Germans and Sicilians have so much interrelationship. Now, swan song. Swan song seems beautiful, doesn't it? You think of all the beautiful songs that we talk about, farewell and goodbye and all of that. But do we really want papal monarchs to say farewell? Well, sometimes when the problems become overwhelming, it is very, very difficult to determine if the papacy is capable of maintaining itself. Someone asked me if we were going to talk about heresies today, and let me mention a heresy or a group that are heretical according to view. Granted that we've cleaned up those Albigensians, but there are always some wandering around. But in terms of major issues, let me remind you of people we call spiritual Franciscans. You say, oh, they're nice. They love Jesus and they want to live in poverty like he did. Nay, nay. They deviate from the church official teaching that Christ and the apostles had property. And they claim that they will be propertyless. And they denounce the majority Franciscans who want to have corporate rights. You know, I mean, the Franciscans are growing. You know, we're spreading. And you say, yeah, and you got to have a bank account. You got to have credit. I mean, you say, what? Well, this minority, you're troubling. And you're sassy, too. We told you your view was wrong. Now shut up and listen. So, I mean, so they are denounced. And that goes on into the 14th century, this whole group. And one of their most prominent, William of Ockham, who dies in 1349 from the plague, that is a problem that will go on, that's ongoing, because they're so proud, we're poor but proud. You know, it's that whole thing about our poverty makes us the true Franciscans. Enough of that for now. Understand then that whoever was Pope was going to have problems. Now, were the Germans still a problem, the Sicilians? Yeah. I mean, that will never relent. That will always be an issue. But as we turn to this issue, we turn westward to the questions of France and England. You know, we love France. The papacy always called France our eldest daughter. I know that people who are sitting in this room this afternoon could never forget Clovis. Yes. And how he reached out when, you remember, he needed the help of his wife's God. Yes. So we know that the Franks became the first Western people to go Catholic. Great. And so they were given this great pronouncement of being the eldest daughter. Nice. And titles are good. I mean, we know, however, that sometimes we can get closer than we really want to. And I think it was a problem sometime for the French because we are thinking of revenues. I hate to always bring this up, but we know whether we're at Auburn or Ollie, whatever it is, the question of revenues and advancing revenues always comes up, doesn't it? So we're not surprised that it would come up, the papacy, looking for sources. Some of the sources seem amazing, but you know, when you're trying to raise money, the power of the human mind to devise new ways to suck it out are powerful. And that was, of course, true for the church. Do you know, I think one of the most interesting, what do they call that, revenue streaming, I think? This was amazing, though. All right, imagine I was a bishop. I do sometimes in my personal fantasies, but enough of me. Let us say that I am called home to eternity, and you think, oh, well, maybe his family will come in then to see about the last will. Oh, you wait your turn. Papal representatives are in first. You say, you mean they're going to get? Yes. Sterling?
Sure.
Yeah, check. You mean, yes, Crystal? A lot of the best stuff. Yes, that's the idea. The local bishop, you know, the successor, the new bishop, he gets second dibs. And then the family can come in and get what's left. You say, you mean the things the Pope or the new bishop didn't want? Slim pickings? Yeah. It seems unfair, but that is the grasp for revenue. You are now going to receive a 4 3/4 minutes. Okay, see you shortly. We are now ready to go on to Swan Song and see how it works when the church and its leadership reach a point that they are no longer capable of managing what has been, since the days of Innocent III, a very stormy period. Now, we did succeed in pretty much disabling the Holy Roman Empire. I'll give them that. Oh gosh, what do they say now? The Holy Roman Empire was almost on life support after this particular reign of Innocent III. I mean, I do not think the emperors, but there will be emperors, but the empire itself is no longer much of a reality except in name. Now, at the end of the period, and you go hanging out at a medieval conference, and you bring up the name of Boniface VIII like Frank, you're going to get a lot of negativity. You know, there is, online at least, I found a Richard III Society, and I think, why do people, they need to get hobbies, they need to get out more. It's a big, beautiful world. And I'm thinking, I have tried to find out if there is a Boniface VIII club. But I'm thinking not so much. He was an interesting character, and if you are going to ask, no, he's not a saint. Was he venerable? I don't think so. Pointed out rightly that he made Dante in a very, very uncomplimentary way. And if you come back in the spring, I'll have a lot more to say about that, because that Dante's views of the papacy and so forth are very, very interesting to me. And I don't know why, but I thought this particular portrait, it makes him appear to be a bit younger than he was when he became Pope, but he definitely has that snide look of superiority upon his face. He is no angel. He is no individual. I tried to be nice, and that's why I just said familial, meaning, of course, that family interests come first, and that is not unusual among Italian popes who have these large families and nephews who are hungry and need work. They need positions. Many of them become very large. As you study Italian history and politics in this period, you find about divisions between those who favor the papal interests versus those who favor perhaps the interests of an emperor or their own people. But whatever it is not time for happiness and peace, believe you me. There's no question that if you were looking, you know, it's like with a senior class, the most likely to do this, or the most popular, or the most was it brilliant or what's smartest or the various senior superlatives. He would have gotten most likely to be Pope for all the wrong reasons. You say, oh, because he loved Jesus so much. No, but because he had the political clout. Brilliant man. He studied canon law, Roman law. He'd had years of what we would call background in the papal foreign service, diplomacy. You can just imagine all that he had done with his family and his own career in the papal bureaucracy. And yes, there was such a thing, papal administration. So you'd watch popes come and go. Remember, you don't know how long their terms may be, some longer than others. So he had been in the ranks for years. And when you are in the ranks, sometimes, at least with some of our presidential candidates, they don't wait a long time before they're ready for the big office, right? And in the papal administration, he was willing to wait his time. But when the Pope would die, and everyone would go, oh, that's so sad. And then he would say, well, I guess I'm here. Big B, I'm waiting. His name was Benedict. And like they used to say in the old Listerine commercials, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. He never, yeah, they used to say that. And it was more or less, you came so close. You were just a few boats away, and I know that we're all really disappointed. We know you're going to serve the new Pope loyally, and you want to give him a big hug. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, there's some bitterness. In fact, I think this man, Benedict, that's his name, Benedetto, had, in fact, much bitterness. And he was particularly disappointed when he lost in early 1294. And boy, is there a story behind that. And you see somebody, I hope you remember, he's retired now, Pope Emeritus. Yeah, this is the famous Pope who abdicated, or they call it resigned, I believe, in the Catholic Church. But there he is, Benedict XVI, not that many years ago, when he stepped down. And I just thought this was the wildest thing in the world when I found this picture. He was taking a tour, and they said, would you like to see the remains of Pope Celestine V? He said, yeah, that'd be interesting. So they took him to, and that's the remains of the Pope in 1294. The Pope that won the election that the future Boniface VIII lost. And you say, well, I hope Boniface was gracious. Well, I don't know if gracious is exactly the word I'd use. He accepted, yeah, congratulations. I'll try to help you. Yeah, but we know in his heart there was bitterness. Yes. And a lot of rumors would come about. Rumors that Boniface VIII, the future Boniface VIII, would now plot against this individual who was Pope Celestine V. Now, you say, what did we know about his pre-papal career? Did he have great experience in canon law? No, he was a monastic superstar. He was a hermit par excellence. They had a whole order of hermits. He founded an order of hermits, isn't that wild? And they lived in caves, and they were of the Eremitic tradition. So I think he was hanging out in his cave when the election board came to tell him, hey, guess what? You're the new Pope. And I think the poor thing was just stunned. Can you imagine? Lord, I haven't had this much company in, I can't remember. I mean, because it kind of goes against the Hermetic tradition. I just can't imagine. I've read a lot about this, and they, you know, come on out. No more caves for you. You're a superstar. And I think he spent those months in a daze. I really do, you know, because, you know, they brought him all these documents to sign, and, oh, you're the successor of Peter, and we just got all this stuff, and you're going to be so great. I don't think he really had a grasp on what was going on. Peter Moroni, Pope St. Celestine V. What happened to him? Why did he leave office? Well, there were rumors, there always are, but in this case, it was clear that he was not enjoying what he did. Because, you know, it's like, how much longer do I have to be in public? I've got some prayers I need to catch up on, and all this company, all these people are really making me nervous. And, you know, it's amazing. And it didn't last for just a few months. But it went so fast, people would claim that he prayed so much that the future Boniface VIII would stand next to his wall. This is told in very many tales, that standing by the wall when the Pope was in prayer, a voice would come, "This is God, and you are right. You are unworthy to be Pope. You need to step down." And of course, poor Celestine V is going, "We're thinking just alike. I agree. I have no ability, no experience. My CV makes me absolutely inadequate to be the successor of Peter." He said, "What are you waiting for?" And so he resigned. He abdicated. And that's why, you know, it's like, it's interesting when you think Benedict stepped down, because no one, if you recall the episode, it was really shocking, the idea of a pope stepping down like that. Now, at this point, we'll come back to Celestine V. He died 2 years later under circumstances that some called questionable. I will merely note that the future Pope, Boniface VIII, would provide him with a recreational prayer area where he would remain. Because I suspect the ex-Pope wanted to return to his cave and get together with his old comrades. I mean, he'd just been gone for, what, since early 1294. And like, "Hey, I'm back, let's start praying." And instead, the new pope would say, "Well, for security reasons, we have this special area. It's a prayer area, you'll hang out here." And he died in 1296, which doesn't necessarily mean, if you're wondering, foul play. I would just say that probably the stress from being Pope during those months and other circumstances would not have helped in long life. But I don't know that. I can only note that he died, and he too, Frank, will have an unpleasant place in Dante's Divine Comedy. More of that in April. At this point, if you go around and hear people say St. Celestine V, don't correct them, because he was canonized under pressure because he will become the anti-papal elements. This Celestine V will become a favorite for reasons we will soon see. Now this is my favorite, because now, boy, he finally became Pope. I've waited. You know, it's like getting that Oscar, you know, finally. You waited for this moment. Now, see me, losers. I'm in charge. I'm ruling. You say, oh, and he has a key. No, he has keys, plural. And it's very important because the idea is I have all authority. Yeah. Others may exercise authority, but they exercise it for me. Yeah. So you know, I'm boss of bosses. So, yeah. So that's the idea. And I'm using some rather harsh language up here. Nepotist, simoniac. Oh, I mean, just slapping the poor soul around. And he was, I mean, he'd been around. He'd been played all the battles, all the bureaucratic battles. He was very powerful. We find out from Dante that his family and other Italian families were very much in conflict for control of the papacy and other interests in Italy. It's a fascinating tale. And by this point in his life, for that day and age, I guess he was in his late 60s, he felt that he was right. He knew. And he wasn't going to, after he had to put up with Celestine V, he was not going to take anything off anybody else. I would call him somewhat belligerent, tactless. There are various words that one could use to refer to Boniface, but one was not docile. Now, as I have pointed out, since popes before him had already made the empire, had made Sicily, other issues, they were no longer major issues. There were other concerns. And that's why I bring out England and France here, as well as the College of Cardinals. We don't think about that a lot. I guess they do now. You think about Francis and having to deal with all these folks. But Boniface VIII had his share of cardinals who were jealous of him. And I don't think, you know, it's not like Boniface VIII was like running from his congeniality, or it's like, oh, everybody just loves you to death. I don't think so. He had lots of enemies. And you think he got up and worried about it? No. He was doing very well, thank you very much. He really was. You said, but you're just a mean old guy. Yeah, and I'm proud of it. That's the way I like it to be. So, more or less, he has enemies among cardinals and enemies among kings, particularly among King Philip IV, the King of France, known to history as Philippe le Bel because he was supposed to be very good looking, and they used the word belle instead of beau. Philippe le Bel, he and the King of England were involved in war. It was, not surprisingly, over English rights in French lands that we think of being French nowadays. So, Boniface says, I need for you fellas to go on a crusade. So you need to stop your war, because that is really offensive when you all are hurting each other when you could go hurt Muslims. So, the wrong hurt, right? So, let's straighten out your business. And he tried, in a sense, to interfere in that. You'll notice, I think interestingly, that they reject his direct arbitration, but they accept it as a human being. He has to issue his arbitration under his pre-papal name. You say, why? Because they won't accept it as the Pope. And you know why? A bunch of lawyers. If you know lawyers, you know what they'll tell you. If you do it once, they'll make a record of it, and somebody else will try it. So you remember that. You heard it here first. The lawyers can be dangerous. And so they wouldn't accept it as Pope. But as a nice human being, it's not a problem. Basically, they arrange marriages, as usual in the Middle Ages. And the idea was they were now going to make peace. But they never went on the crusade. And we always ask ourselves, why? Well, because the Pope went a step too far. And that was to interfere in royal revenues. Mess with me, my family, okay. Mess with my money, we got a problem. And the idea was cutting off clerical revenues from the monarchy. And that's a big revenue stream. The kings had big collections of the money that the church had, and you say, what was the justification? Protection. Now, I don't mean anything ugly like mafia. I mean like we're protecting you from pagans, heathen, and then you fill our love bucket with treasure, you know, that kind of thing, trick or treat. So the idea is then we're going to have this and you'll help us. But instead, Pope Boniface decided he would just cut it off. He said, you know, we gave permission for you to have it, and now we'll simply cut it all off and it will bring peace. Well, the kings don't like to be told. You say, but this is the Pope. I'm sorry, I don't care. And this is clearly a revival. The Pope had, by 1300, great views of grandiosity. He had no problems. You know, there wasn't any papal psychiatrists who had to deal with self-esteem issues. Believe me, he had plenty of self-esteem. Every morning he could look at the looking glass and, I'm Prince of Princes. I'm great. But we sometimes like those little ego boosters. And there's nothing like a papal jubilee to do that. Because you're going like, I wonder what all those noises are outside, you know, going on outside the Vatican. It's, oh, those are my people. They love me. And it's that kind of thing. And this is called the Jubilee. There had been jubilees before. You say, all those pilgrims in Rome? Shoot, yeah. You get all kinds of spiritual benefits. You get, you know, a notch. Because you might not be able to go on a crusade. You have some other responsibilities, busy. And so you have to cut the crusade. And so this is like a makeup day for you or something going on. That's the truth, though. They do go on this. And they get some kinds of spiritual benefits. So they say. And at the same time, Boniface is going, wow. He said, they love me. Those blankety-blank kings are such losers because they love me. Well, in terms of delusional, he reaches great, great levels because his enemies are not only the kings of England and France, but they're also major individuals who are Italians and enemies of his family within the College of Cardinals. So it's like you're an accountant. You remember those old machines like we used to use to add up things? Yeah. And so you're adding up the Boniface enemies list, and it's like it is really, really bad. But the common people, the Jubilee people, the pilgrims, they're going, go Big B. We love you. You know, you can just imagine. Now, he tried to do some things like make Louis IX a saint in thinking that he and Philip IV could reconcile their differences. But Philip IV could not be, shall we say, controlled, as long as it came with the revenues of the crown. As a matter of fact, it is said, and I try to be careful here, it is said that this caused the first meeting of what we call the Estates General, which we know from the French Revolution. The meeting of commons and churchmen and nobles, the three estates. They met, and of course the king said, do you agree with me, or we could take a vote. Would you agree more with the Pope? You know, oui or non? Which is your... And they said, oh, you're right. Surprise! Yeah, if you call together these people... But the interesting thing is, in the first estate, and that is the clergy, they were also anti-Boniface. Although if I were sitting there with the king, I don't know if I would say, I don't know, sir, I think you're pretty darn wrong there. You better get yourself straightened out, get right with God, you know. No. No, 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 no. We are all pro-Philip. So, that was 1302. If you're ever hanging out with people who are interested in the history of the Estates General, remember that year. You heard it here first, 1302. And now, this is the one I've been waiting for. Unum Sanctum, one holy Catholic Church, we are bound to confess and admit. And outside this church, there is no salvation. So, if you are Greek, you must think there is some other way, and you're a loser, a damned loser. Unum Sanctum is the most complete statement of papal authority ever made. And if any other pope follows this, I don't know who. But this is just too radical. But, as you can imagine, it is sweeping in terms of its dimensions, because it follows logical steps and says all of these others have authority, but my authority comes from God alone, unlike other rulers. And the bishops, they have authority, but my authority is from God alone. In other words, his doctrines here must have been worked out, but when it reaches King Philip or King Edward in England, there's unpleasantness, grave unpleasantness, such that King Philip, yes, and his Italian enemies will make common call. The Pope was in a place, I guess it's about an hour away from Rome, you know, as the crows fly, that sort of thing, in papal territories, in a place called Anagni, I think it would have been a sort of Camp David for the popes of the 13th century. Because you think, what is he doing there? Well, shoot, I'm not sure at that time of the year the weather would have been so great in Rome if you've been in Rome in the summers. So, whatever, he was there, and these troops arrived and apparently tried to maintain him in a situation he didn't want to be in. He was Pope. I bet he cursed them. But I meant it cursing in a nice way. I don't mean like some sort of roughshod people. I mean put the big, blow out the candles, whatever it took. And then I think the Anani Chamber of Commerce or Rotary Club, somebody came and said, you cannot have the Pope arrested. We'll all go to hell. Yeah, I always thought, you know, when I was younger and more naive, I used to think, oh, they just love him so much. I don't think that's it at all. They thought, get him out of here. Don't lay a hand on him. He'll send us all to hell. And, I mean, you got to believe. So they said, all right, we're out of here. So he made it back to Rome. I guess he lived a month or two after that. I think you would call that death from shock or whatever. I don't think he was used to that, or I think it was a big, unpleasant surprise. And I think it's fair to say that the papacy, well, that's rather dramatic, isn't it? And I'm sure I dressed up just for you, you know? This is just my casual wear. I mean, yeah, but I thought I just threw on something. Thanks for stopping by. Can you imagine? Yeah, right. Yeah. So when it happened, he did get out, but no one after Boniface supported the claims which seem almost preposterous to us. Philip IV wanted anything to ruin the reputation of Boniface, which was not hard, like saying that Boniface had been responsible for Celestine's death and or abdication. And they also brought up that his personal life was shoddy. I mean, he was accused of gambling, necromancy, sodomy. You say, oh, a whole cavalcade of sins. Yes. And he said, and how would you like us to try him by the French court? He said, well, how would you do that? Bring up his corpse. And they would say, well, you know, that would be so unpleasant. Why don't we not do that? And let's just work together for a bigger and better church and state relationship. How about that as a substitute? It is amazing. And I think they gave the papacy a very hard time in those years. And it was very, very painful. I guess people in the future would say, well, they had their big time, but it was over, as is my time. Thank you all very much for a great term. I appreciate it. I hope to see many of you all in the spring.